So there's a certain cadence you've probably noticed. About once every month and a half or so, some media outlet publishes an article about the joys of being childless. And usually it's an article written by some childless woman who's living, she claims, a life of unending joy and relaxation and luxury, all made possible by her decision to be childless. Sometimes this content takes the form of interviews with various different childless people who all agree that their barren, impotent lifestyle has been a source of great happiness. This is usually the way that the child-free propaganda is packaged. But on occasion, things take a more negative, kind of dour turn. Once every few months, we get an article highlighting instead those people who did have kids and regret it. Every once in a while, the media takes a break from the look how happy child-free people are genre to present something from the look how unhappy parents are genre. And it looks like it's that time of year again, as Time magazine has just published an article written by a writer named R.O. Kwan called The Parents Who Regret Having Children. Now, Kwan is a childless woman herself, but she is generously giving voice to parents who wish that they could live just like she does. The article begins this way, quote, "No one regrets having a child, or so it's said. I've heard this logic often, usually after I'm asked if I have children. Then, when I say I don't, if I plan to. I tend to evade the question, as I find that the truth, I have no plans to be a parent, is likely to invite swift dissent. I'll be told I'll change my mind, that I'm wrong, that while I regret not having a child, people don't regret the obverse. Close family acquaintances, and total strangers have said this for years. I let it slide, knowing that, at the very least, the last part is a fiction." Now, I have to pause here already. That's the very first paragraph of the article, and it's wrong. Whoever said that no one regrets having children? Like, we all know, people regret anything. It's any choice that a person can make in life, there's someone out there who regrets it. It doesn't matter what it is. There are plenty of people who regret winning the lottery, okay? So we all know that these kinds of parents exist in the world. I've never heard anyone deny their existence. So we're kicking off this nearly 3,000-word article with a straw man. So not the most auspicious of beginnings, but let's keep reading. Quote, "It is unsurprisingly a challenge to get solid data on the number of parents who regret having children. In 1975, the popular advice columnist Ann Landers asked her readers if, given the chance to do it all over again, they'd have children. 70% said they wouldn't. This result, though, came from a group of self-selecting respondents. Quote, the hurt, angry, and disenchanted are more inclined to write back than contented people, as Landers observed in a follow-up column. But in 2013, a Gallup poll asked Americans 45 and older how many kids they'd have if they could go back in time. 7% of the respondents with children said 0. And in 2023, a study estimated that up to 5% to up to 14% of parents in so-called developed countries, including the United States, regret their decision to have children. These studies align with what I've found in my personal life. While most parents don't regret having kids, some do. Perhaps in part because I've written publicly about choosing not to have children, I've had people, especially mothers, confide in me about parental regret, and frequently enough, I've lost count. So this woman apparently has people going up to her all the time claiming that nobody regrets having children, while she has a whole other set of people approaching her constantly to tell her about their own parental regret. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. I can't say what conversations this woman has had. I do find it odd because, I will say that I have never once heard anyone claim that no parent in the world regrets having kids. And I've also never once had any parent tell me that they personally regret having their own kids. Which doesn't mean those parents don't exist. It's just, in my experience, it's not the kind of thing that people go around advertising. But Miss Kwan hears both of those things all the time. Maybe she's just a friendlier, more inviting person who people are more comfortable confiding in. That is certainly entirely possible. Still, I find the framing here somewhat dubious. That's the point. Next, she tells us about the shame and guilt that these regretful parents feel, which stops them from sharing their stories publicly. And the very clear implication here is that these parents should be able to speak more openly about their regret, but our society is tragically unwelcoming to those conversations. She writes, quote, "Some of these parents talk about feeling utterly alone, like villains past all imagining. Several have noted that, afraid of being judged, they decline to be candid with their own therapist. I've thought about the isolating effect of the silence and what it can cost to live in hiding. One problem is that our culture wants just one kind of story about parenting, and it's a story of pure joy," says Yael Goldstein Love, a writer and psychotherapist in California, whose clinical practice focuses on people who are adapting to parenthood. But Goldstein Love says people often experience grief in the transition to being a parent, grief for the life they might have inhabited otherwise. But I also wonder who's being served well by a monolithic idea that no one regrets being a parent. Not these parents, not as some of the people I've spoken with have pointed out, any kid who picked up on parental regret and thinks it can't happen except to them. If more people had the support to make reproductive choices based on their own desires and life situations, and if the monolith were spalled in favor of plural narratives that better reflect the complexities of human experience, what then? Well, we'll talk about the what then in a moment, but first let's look briefly at the specific examples that Quan provides of parents who regret their children and also the kind of rationalization that these parents offer. Quote, I don't think that everyone is made for children, says Helen, a high school teacher in her 40s, and telling people that their purpose is to reproduce is destructive, she adds. And if she could inhabit the person she was before she became a parent, quote, I would have stopped that pregnancy before it happened. But that's the part Helen's never said to her daughters, who, after all, didn't ask to be born. She's hell-bent on raising them well, not taking out any regrets on the girls. Quote, I love them, I just don't love the choice I made. Each parent I talk to points out this dividing line. It's possible to have strong, lasting regrets about a life choice while ferociously loving and caring for the fruit of that decision. Well, she goes on next to tell us about a guy named Paul, a very similar story, a father who confesses to resenting parenthood because of how challenging and time-consuming it is. We're told that he's stressed out and fatigued and regretful about ever having become a parent in the first place. And what he lacks most of all, he says, is anyone in his life that he can talk to about his feelings of parental regret. He needs more spaces where he can talk about how much he regrets having kids. That's what he insists. Although he also says that he loves his kids. They are, quote, the loves of his life, according to Quan. Amidst the chaos of my daily life, I find solace in my Helix mattress. It's not just a mattress, it's a sanctuary that prepares me for the challenges of the next day. Helix harnesses years of mattress expertise to offer a truly elevated sleep experience. The Helix Elite Collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. If you're nervous about buying a mattress online, you don't have to be. Helix has you covered. Their unique sleep quiz customizes your mattress based on your body type and sleep preferences. No more generic mattresses made for someone else. I took the Helix quiz and I was matched with a firm but breathable mattress. I love the mattress. I'm confident you'll love yours too. Plus, Helix has a 10-year warranty and you get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. Helix's financing options and flexible payment plans ensure a great night's sleep is never far away. Helix is offering my listeners 20% off on all mattress orders and 2 free pillows. Go to helixsleep.com/Walsh. That's helixsleep.com/Walsh. This is their best offer yet and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. Now, we've probably heard enough of this article to get the basic idea, especially considering that, as I said at the top, we've seen 1,000 versions of this exact article. So let's go through and make a few points in response. First, it must be said, and I hate to say it, I really do, but you don't love your kids if you regret having them. You cannot regret a person's very existence and yet also love them at the same time. You just can't. Wishing that a person doesn't exist is the exact opposite of loving them. Think about putting this into a sentence and you'll see how absurd it is. I love you, son. I just wish you were never born. Like, not exactly the kind of sentiment you'd want to write in someone's birthday card. Happy birthday, although I'd be happier if you never had a birthday. Like, that's not love. That's a lot of things. We could say a lot of things about that. We cannot call that love. Now, that is not to say that you can't love your kids while also being frustrated by them sometimes. You can love someone while also experiencing a range of emotions, and not all of them pleasant. You can love someone and be angry at them. You can love someone and be irritated at them. You can love someone and wish they'd stop talking and asking questions for 5 seconds. None of these emotions are at all contradictory to loving someone. You shouldn't dwell in the negative emotions. You shouldn't harp on them. You shouldn't delight in them and want to live in those emotions all the time, the way that some people do with their negative emotions. And you shouldn't be venting those emotions all the time. But you can experience those emotions while still loving your child, obviously. And that's because loving your child or anyone else, what it really means is wishing for and working towards and helping them towards what is good in life, willing the good of the other. is what love is. It means subordinating your own desires to some extent for their sake. Love is sacrifice. But if you wish that someone never had come into existence in the first place so that you can focus more on your own desires, then you don't love them. This is, again, the literal direct opposite of love. And yes, you might have parents who regret having kids and therefore don't love them, but still take care of the kids, still do the bare minimum that they need to do to get by. That's not love. And you also don't get any credit for that. Like, you owe that to your child. The bare minimum you owe to your child because you brought them into existence. But it's still not love. Now, the irony here is that these sorts of articles pretend to call for a kind of, radical honesty, insisting that people should be able to speak openly and frankly about even their most unspeakable and shameful thoughts and emotions. And yet these articles themselves are not honest. Because the honest truth is that these aren't parents who simply regret having children. These are parents who don't love their children. The title of the article should be "The Parents Who Don't Love Their Children." That should be the article. But you never see that article, do you? You never see a lack of parental love being defended, at least not explicitly. Instead, we're given these sob stories about parents who regret their children's very existence, always couched in the disclaimer that they certainly still love their kids and would do anything for them, etc. So they're calling for honesty, but it's a rather dishonest kind of honesty, an honesty that takes something disgraceful and dresses it up in what is supposed to be slightly less disgraceful packaging. But why? What's the point? I mean, why not go all the way? These parents don't love their children. Why not come out and say it? I think the answer is that it's easier to elicit sympathy if you tell someone about your regret. A woman plagued by regret is a pitiable figure. She's a victim of her circumstances. That's how we're meant to see it anyway. And maybe that kind of branding works for some people. But on the other hand, a woman who doesn't love her children is seen rightly as the villain of her own story. We immediately recognize that if parents lack love for their own children, it's because of a flaw in them, the parent. The problem is them. Not loving your child or regretting that they were born, which is the same thing, is entirely a product of selfishness. Selfishness is the enemy of love. And that's the issue that all these parents are struggling with. Their own selfishness. It's that simple. Now, I say it's simple, doesn't mean it's easy. It's not necessarily easy to become less selfish. And the sad truth is that most people who are, obsessively selfish will remain that way their entire lives. If anything, and we've all seen this, it will get worse as they get older. But it doesn't have to be that way. And either way, this is the only solution. Be less selfish, and you will love your kids more, or at all in this case. And then you'll discover more joy in parenthood, but also a different kind of sadness. There's a more sort of beautiful sadness that comes with parenting when you actually love your kids. It's the sadness that comes with the knowledge that your kids are growing and changing every day, and that eventually they'll be old and jaded and cynical about the world, just like you are. That's the kind of parenting regret that loving parents feel, and feel quite intensely every day. This is the solution for the wrong kind of parent regret. You have to identify the problem within yourself and work on that. The solution is certainly not to express these emotions out loud. Now, if you want to express it to someone who's an actual trusted counselor or advisor, spiritual advisor, maybe a therapist, if you happen to have one of the 5 good ones in the whole country, then that's okay. But this desire to go around verbalizing it to anybody you want and building communities around this feeling, going to like a Reddit forum where everyone talks about how they regret having kids, that's an unhealthy desire. Because not every feeling should be verbalized. And if you feel something shameful and disgraceful and vile, which that's what it is if you wish your kids were not born, you should keep that to yourself. The guilt and isolation that these feelings breed are good because they're like the pain you experience when you put your hand on the hot stove. It's a warning to you. It's an incentive to fix what is broken in your soul. It's your own soul crying out to you. It's saying, something's wrong here. There's a problem. Now, if you go around confessing these feelings openly, it's only because you want someone to convince you that the feelings are okay. But you know they aren't, which is why you want to be convinced otherwise. You wouldn't have this desire to be convinced if you were comfortable with those feelings. So listen to your own moral instincts, not these anti-family propaganda pieces from media outlets like Time. Now, as for the media outlets, they will defend these kinds of articles by claiming that they want to give voice to all different kinds of perspectives. As Kwan puts it, we should have, quote, plural narratives that better reflect the complexities of human experience. Well, okay, but if that's the case, then why do we see 1,000 articles about childless people who love being childless and parents who hate being parents? But rarely do we see any articles about childless people who hate being childless, or, best of all, parents who love being parents. That'd be a great article, wouldn't it? The parents who love their kids. Let's hear some of those stories. Maybe we could help these regretful parents by giving them positive, enriching, wholesome examples of happy families. Maybe they could benefit from insights offered by parents who have managed to be happy in spite of the challenges that parenting presents. There's a whole aspect of the complexity of human experience that we rarely see represented by the media in any form. But I think it could do a lot of good, and it could help a lot of people. Which is, of course, exactly why we don't see it, because they don't want to help anyone, and that's the whole point. And that is why Time Magazine and all of the other anti-child, anti-family propagandists are today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.